Welcome back to the Badass Literature Society, where badasses come together to rate and review novels recommended by you. Hi, I'm Michael.
This is Barbara.
And I'm Lauren.
This month we read Recursion by Blake Crouch. Blake is a best-selling novelist and screenwriter. He's the author of a dozen novels, most recently Dark Matter, Recursion, and Upgrade, for which he is also writing the movie for Steven Spielberg's Amblin Partners. His international best-selling Wayward Pines trilogy was also adapted into a television series for Fox, which was executive produced by M. Night Shyamalan. And that was summer of 2015's #1 show. With Chad Hodge, Crouch also created Good Behavior, the TNT show starring Michelle Dockery, based on his Letty Dubesh novellas. His novel Recursion, that we read for this review, is currently being developed as a Netflix series by Shonda Rhimes and Matt Reeves, and Skydance is developing a film adaptation of his novella, Summer Frost, based on Crouch's script. His novels have been translated into 40 languages, and his short fiction has appeared in numerous publications, including Ellery Queen, Alfred Hitchcock Mystery Magazine, and Cemetery Dance. At the moment, Crouch is writing a new book and creating a 9-episode adaptation of his novel Dark Matter that we reviewed 2 months ago for Apple TV+. Blake lives in Colorado. Barbara, do you want to tell us a little bit about the book itself?
So this was originally published on June 11th, 2019. It's considered science fiction and thriller. It has 336 pages. It currently has a 4.2 on Goodreads, 4.5 on Barnes & Nobles, 4.5 on Amazon, and a 4.5 on Audible. It actually won the Goodreads Choice Award for Science Fiction in 2019. And we do think it's important for readers to know what, if any, representation is in the books we read. So for this book, there's none. There are no main or minor POC characters, really, no LGBTQ, and no characters with disabilities. So there we have it.
Okay. Lauren, you want to give us a short synopsis?
Sure. So this book is basically about a New York City cop, Barry Sutton, and he investigates the devastating phenomenon the media has dubbed false memory syndrome, a mysterious affliction that drives its victims mad with memories of a life they never lived. That's what that's what neuroscientist Helena Smith believes. It's why she's dedicated her life to creating a technology that will let us preserve our most precious memories. If she succeeds, anyone will be able to re-experience a first kiss, the birth of a child, the final moment with a dying parent. As Barry searches for the truth, he comes face to face with an opponent more terrifying than any disease, a force that attacks not just our minds, but the very fabric of the past. And as its effects begin to unmake the world as we know it, only he and Helena, working together, will stand a chance at defeating it. But how can they make a stand when reality itself is shifting and crumbling all around them? At once, a relentless page-turner and an intricate science fiction puzzle box about time, identity, and memory, Recursion is a thriller as only Blake Crouch could imagine it, and his most ambitious, mind-boggling, irresistible work to date.
I think that's pretty accurate. So what did you guys think about Recursion? And remember, no spoilers.
So I enjoyed it. It's definitely a trippy book once you really get into it and then start going down its wormhole of ideas. I like that we had the 2 POV characters throughout the story. I did find it hard to read on the Kindle, only because it made it harder for me to flip through the book. And I tend to do that, especially for these types of books, because it's just a lot going on and I like to kind of connect the dots. And that made it hard for me for this book, especially for this book because of how trippy it is. But overall, I did enjoy it.
So I really like this book too. I agree with Barbara though and I rarely would agree with you on this, but because I so love reading on the Kindle, but this is one that it actually really would have been nice to have one and actually just like Dark Matter, it's such a crazy all over the place, holy shit, how is this happening? It would be nice to be able to be okay, hold on, let me flip back a couple chapters like you were saying. And so I totally get that. I really enjoy this book. I have really enjoyed, to be honest, every book that I've read by Blake Crouch, which includes the last one we read as well as the Wayward Pines books. It was great. If you like sci-fi, I think this is a great book.
Yeah, I definitely thought the book was a bit of a mind F. Like Barbara said, it's trippy. I did enjoy it, though. It was slightly hard to track at times in the Audible version. And that's just because we were jumping between points of view, but also we were jumping between the different memories without getting into too many spoilers. sometimes it was difficult to keep track of where in time I was when I was listening. But overall, I really enjoyed it. And I really did like the voice on this one for Audible, for what it's worth, for our audiobook listeners.
So like normal, we're not going to go into our individual ratings for now. We have to wait for that. But our group score for this book was a 7.6 out of 10. Now, knowing that, would you recommend this book? And I think, like I mentioned earlier, it's an easy recommendation. I think like Dark Matter, this is another one. Like if you guys remember, if you listen to that episode, that one was recommended to us as a book that Lauren, who's our resident non-fantasy sci-fi person, would have loved, and she did. And we all said that was going to be a great entry point for anybody who was maybe similar to Lauren and didn't always or didn't find themselves reading these genres often. And I think you could say the same thing about Recursion. It there's a lot of similar things going on. It's equally as trippy, if not more so at times. So I think safely I can say if you like sci-fi and you're into this genre, absolutely you're going to love it. And if you don't like it, I think it's one that I would recommend. Hey, you should give it a shot because I think you will probably find that you will like it.
Yeah, this one I would definitely recommend it. I think it has similarities to Dark Matter, like Michael said, but it was different enough to enjoy them both. Like I didn't feel like I was rereading the same book. It had enough of different plot points and storylines. Someone not into sci-fi might enjoy this one because it is a genre bender in the sense that like I feel like it can be enjoyed by people who like more of the suspense and psychology side, but are also into sci-fi. I also feel like this one, without getting into spoilers, is maybe slightly more realistic than Dark Matter in the sense that like it's working more on, which we'll talk about later, but yeah, I just feel like it is more within the realm of like possibility, which makes it a scarier book too.
That's actually a really good point. I think I would recommend it, but only if you read Dark Matter first. I think that one was a little bit easier to swallow. And it's funny because of what Lauren just said, but I still agree with that statement of myself. Just because I think this one had more science fiction aspects. If someone like really wasn't into it, I think I had eased them into it first with Dark Matter. But if someone loves that like science fiction genre, then this one's recommended all the way. Like both of you guys said, it's completely different from the first one. And the only reason why I think this Dark Matter might be a little bit easier to swallow was if I think the science fiction behind that one, while Lauren mentioned, is kind of way more out there. I think it's a common enough theory that a lot of people have if you've watched like Avengers or if you've seen any type of other, I guess I don't want to spoil Dark Matter either, but it's just, I feel like that concept is more out. Like I've read different books with that kind of same concept where this one was like a brand new one to me, like in the sense, like how Lauren, once again, trying not to spoil stuff, but based off of memories, that's what we're looking at. And I've just never thought of that concept at all. Like this was a brand new concept to me, at least. And so I thought it was a little bit harder to follow because of that. But anyways, yes.
So the only thing I would add to that is that I think that one of the reasons I enjoy these books a lot is that Blake Crouch does a really good job, even though they are science fiction, grounding them in both cases in, theoretical physics. Like there are real theories out there that are made by
Correct.
people that are much, much smarter than we are, that actually like these things could be.
Right.
Could happen.
They just could happen. Yeah.
That's one thing I think is really cool what he does is it is like he takes it a step further in the sense that humanity has successfully done these things in his universes, but it's grounded in the sense that they are based on like real theoretical physics theories, which is cool. For those of you that are leaving us at this point, don't forget to give us a rating if you like us. Make sure you're also following us on Facebook and Instagram. In both places, our handle is @BadassLitPod. We'd love to hear from you. If you've got a book you want us to read, let us know. Now, Lauren is going to give us a short preview of our next episode. Next month, we are reading Midnight Library by Matt Haig, which was recommended to us by Jen on Facebook.
Woo! Shout out to Jen. Midnight Library. Between life and death, there is a library, and within that library, the shelves go on forever. Every book provides a chance to try another life you could have lived, to see how things would be if you had made other choices. Would you have done anything different if you had the chance to undo your regrets? A novel about all the choices that go into a life well lived. Somewhere out beyond the edge of the universe, there is a library that contains an infinite number of books, each one the story of another reality. One tells the story of your life as it is, along with another book for the life that you could have lived if you had made a different choice at any point in your life. While we all wonder how our lives might have been, what if you had the chance to go to the library and see for yourself? Would any of these other lives truly be better? Nora Seed finds herself faced with this decision, faced with the possibility of changing her life for a new one. Following a different career, undoing old breakups, realizing her dreams of becoming a glaciologist, she must search within herself as she travels through the Midnight Library to decide what is truly fulfilling in life and what makes it worth living in the first place.
That's got some dark matter vibes there.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
we are on a sci-fi
We
bender
are,
right
man.
now, y'all.
Mhm. And I've already started this one, and it's really good so far.
Well, there
Okay,
you go.
yeah, that's for next month, Lauren. Let's not
I know,
worry
I'm
about
just
your
saying.
thoughts. Now, remember, guys, the second part of this episode is going to be an in-depth look at Recursion. So if you do want to read it, and I seriously mean this, stop listening now. Like the last Blake Crouch book we read, there's going to be crazy spoilers when we get past this section. So if you do want to read it, please stop, come back and listen to the rest when you are done.
These days, more authors are including mental health content in their books. But do you ever wonder how accurate some of this stuff is?
Or do you ever read something where you know the author just gets it?
I'm Elise.
And I'm Priscilla.
And we are Novel Feelings, a podcast where we discuss mental health issues in fiction novels.
We are psychologists and book lovers, and we have a lot of opinions.
So look for Novel Feelings wherever you get your podcasts.
Now, back to your show.
Now, for those of you sticking around for the spoilers, here we go. So we're going to start out like we always do and figure out who gets the Badass Character Award. Barbara, who is your nominee for the Badass Character Award?
I feel like this one's really quite easy if you ask me. It's Helena, just for literally going mad trying to fix the end of the world aspect, like hands down. She takes the cake. Plus everything else, like she's smart, talented, empathetic. She's a flawed character. All the things that I enjoy in a character, she had it. And everything that she did, just easy peasy. For me, personally, I think. So, her.
So for me, it's an easy choice too. It's Slade. Slade is clearly... No, I'm just kidding.
You would.
Yeah, really,
He does like villains, so it's on par, on brand.
No, I think that you could maybe argue that it's a tough choice between Helena and Barry, but because I'm picking Helena, she definitely edges him out in this one. And I mean, everything she does, like the fact that she's this badass scientist that creates this technology that allows all of it to happen. The fact that, she stands up to the powers that be in defense of her technology or not using her technology. And, also there's that she, like what she does near the end of the book when she's like lives through hundreds and hundreds of years of her life to try to fix things like that. How is she not a badass?
I also chose Helena for all of the aforementioned reasons. So she wins.
Easy enough. Helena, you are the Badass Character Award winner for Recursion. So speaking of Helena, let's talk about the characters a little bit, and we'll start with her. Barbara, do you want to tell us a little bit about Helena as a character?
So she is the creator of the chair, and if you haven't read the book, then you have no idea what I'm talking about, and that's your fault. So she is the OG creator of the chair. It's her baby, essentially. And in the OG timeline, she's also the one who solved how to fix the whole remembering everything issue that had happened, but she doesn't remember that because of Slade. But anyways, she is the scientist. She is one of the main point of view characters, if not maybe the point, like the number one. Would you say she's the main character?
So I would say
I'd say it's
she's
between her and Barry.
Sure,
Yeah.
her and Barry, but like who do you think edges out a little more?
I mean,
'Cause
I would
feel
say
like-
Helena. It's like a 60-40 thing. Like I think she has slightly more POV
Yeah.
time than Barry does.
I don't know, but I guess the book opens up with him and ends with him, so take that as you will. But yeah, she is the badass scientist, and yeah, I don't want to go into too much, but that's kind of her character.
We'll get into details later, right?
Yeah.
Next character we'll talk about is Barry. Barry's our our other main character. Barry is a police officer who, like Lauren mentioned in the back of the book description, is investigating this false memory syndrome thing that's going along. Except he gets too deep and then gets kidnapped by our bad guy and sent back in time, which kind of loops Barry into this whole story. And yeah, I mean, again, just like Helena, we're not going to go into crazy details, but a lot of Barry's life, and at least at the beginning, revolves around him trying to save his daughter, who was killed in a car accident in the original timeline. But yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting story. I would say he's, like I mentioned before, I'd say 40% Barry, 60% Helena for main characters. At least that's my opinion.
I forgot to mention for Helena, the sole reason why she started this was because her mom has Alzheimer's.
Yep.
And she didn't build the chair for the purpose that what it ended up being made into because of Slade. She originally wanted it to have a way to help people who have Alzheimer's, dementia, and that sort of thing.
Yep.
So yes, I feel like that's kind of important.
That is super important, yeah, because like you said, the goal was to go back into those people's brains and unlock memories that got lost,
just relive those memories with them type thing, instead of like literally using it as a time traveling device
right
within your memories. Real trippy.
It's super trippy. Let's see. Next, let's talk about the bad guy. Lauren, you want to talk about Slade?
As you mentioned, he's the bad guy. He basically takes Helena's invention and uses it for not good things, and ends up taking something that she intended for good, and it ends up ultimately being the destruction of the world. So Slade's kind of a douche.
Yeah.
I do love, though, when you eventually find out, like at the beginning, you think Slade's like this badass billionaire, really smart guy.
No one thought that. It's just you, maybe. I always thought he gave me creepy vibes, and I said it like the first chapter we had, and we actually meet him. I turned around to Michael because Michael was a little ahead, and he's like, "I really like Slade," and blah blah. I was like, mark my words, he's gonna be the creepy villain. If there's a villain in this book, it's gonna be him. And guess what? It was.
I mean, I think at the beginning of the book, when we first meet Slade is kind of sold as like a Tony Stark-esque character in this book.
With creepy vibes, sure.
With creepy vibes, yes. But then I think it's funny that at the end of it, you find out in the OG timeline, Slade was actually like the assistant who brought people coffee at the lab. Like he was a nobody.
He was a drug addict and kind of didn't amount to anything, and was helping Helena with her work. And then he
killed her.
Well, yeah, he killed her and stole her idea because he knew like its actual potentials and stuff like that. And he was an awful human, awful human in the sense that he's willing to do whatever it takes for end goals of what he thought was his end goals.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think he's like your stereotypical villain, like hoo world domination. He literally just wanted to make this chair available for everyone so that they could realize their dreams. But he didn't realize that, unfortunately, human nature, there's always going to be people who want it to use it for bad.
Which is literally was a drug addict. So how do you not how do you not understand some of human nature a little bit?
Right. You would think that you would have a little bit better understanding of the dark side of human nature, but apparently he was just like,
Michael and Slade would have been buddies, apparently.
I know. Michael's like, he's so cool. I rev him. I was like,
I never said that.
I want to be like Slade. I was like, okay.
This is slander. I'll be filing lawsuits after this. This is completely slander and libel. Anyway, that is Slade. He is the bad guy in our book. I'm going to jump the line and talk about the next one because I'm assuming Barbara doesn't think he's important enough to talk
I don't know. Do you think like he's in it like a little bit in the beginning, a little bit at the end, or in the middle, and then there you go? Like,
I think he's the definition of a side character, which why can we not talk about some side characters? Like Ji-Woon is his name. He is one of a scientists who works in a lab with Helena and Slade. He, I think, is the only reason why you would mention him, or the most important reason you'd mention him, is at the beginning of the book, he is the person who approaches Helena and makes this offer to come work for Slade with unlimited money and unlimited funding and all this like crazy, like, scientist's wet dream kind of stuff. And gets her to come on board in the first place. And I think he plays a kind of major role later in the book. Like he's the one that killed Barry in one of the timelines, right?
I mean, sure. There's a bunch of timelines where a bunch of people die, so like he's not I don't
not like
know.
a main
You
character.
talked
for
about
sure.
him. There you go. You got what you wanted.
did.
I don't think
I
he was
did.
that important, but
So
personally.
now, since I skipped you, you can talk about, we'll just combine the next two. You can talk about Barry's wife and daughter.
Sure. So Barry, like Michael mentioned earlier, Barry's daughter died on I don't know if it was a drunk driving, but like a hit and run. Essentially, she was crossing the street, car hit her. They never found out who did it type thing. She died. That's where he is in the original timeline. Slade sends him back as that's what I'm saying. Like Slade's like, hey, like since you kind of figured me out type thing, I'm going to give you a second chance at life to save your daughter. So sends him back. Sends Barry back. Barry saves his daughter. And then what happens in the book is like when your memory reaches the point where you knew about this, it reconvenes and like everybody that you went back and did stuff to remembers their previous life. And so that really F's up his daughter, essentially. And she kills herself in the other timeline where Barry tries to fix it. But I think it was on her like 20-something birthday, 20. I don't know. She was a bit older. As far as his wife is concerned, it's his wife. They divorced because in the original timeline, because obviously if the daughter's death kind of affected their relationship. And then in the second timeline where Barry saves his daughter from the car running over thing, they still get a divorce. So it's kind of one of those things where like regardless, it wasn't the daughter's passing, it was just not that type of relationship. That's pretty much the basis of that.
Yeah.
That, you know,
I did think that was kind of an interesting thing that they explored, though, where like, because Barry thought for so long that their relationship failed because the daughter died. And so
he was very not hateful, but like he had like this thought in his head that if the daughter had not died, his life would have been so much better.
Yeah.
Like his relationship wouldn't have failed. And then he lived through where his daughter didn't die so early, and it still failed. And I think that's the point where he finally realized that, you know, they just weren't compatible.
Yeah. No, yeah. I just, one of the many things that the author did that was interesting is how I told the story.
At the end of the day, I feel like his books are still like an ode to love, because then like Helena and Barry are like that's the actual like love stories between them.
Yep.
And I was not expecting, I mean, I should have expected that, but it was kind of like, oh, okay, it's going to be turning into that thing. When they kind of briefly mentioned it, I was like, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. They kind of hinted at like, oh, in another timeline we haven't talked about yet, there was a relationship. But anyway, we'll move on past the characters. There's not, I mean, there's a small cast of characters in this one. There's a lot of irrelevant characters that are brought up. Not
irrelevant. Like they're relevant to the story, but they're small enough that they give enough light to the story to pull it forward and that sort of thing. But it's not like huge players in the overall scheme of the story.
That was a much better way of describing that. Thank you, Barbara. So our first question for this book is, if you were put in Helena's position, would you have accepted Ji-woon's offer, especially without knowing who you'd be working for? You know, it's tricky to like, if you put yourself in that position and you think about like her goals and what she wanted to do, or if you just pretend like that you're a scientist that's trying to make some big discovery in whatever your field you're working in, I think it would be hard for any scientist to turn down an offer of unlimited funding. I think that it's one of those situations where you probably put on rose-colored glasses or blinders, and you just pretend that, you know, you don't think about the consequences, or that maybe this is kind of shady that they're going to throw unlimited money at this. And you're just like, oh my God, like I can do what I wanted to do. It's unlimited funding and it's crazy. And I think so. Yeah. I think in her position or any other position as a scientist, getting made that offer, I think I would do what she did. I think I might be hesitant at first, but I'd probably accept it.
I thought it was super sketchy. I don't know if I would. It seemed like, I feel like it's one of those, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah, but how many people fall for that, you know?
Yeah. No, I mean, and I just basically put, I honestly don't know what I would do in that situation. I'd like to say that I would know better, or like think like, no, don't do that. Like, see the red flags, but I don't know. Hard to say.
I feel like it's one of those things, it's hindsight 2020, right? Like too good to be true moments that, you know, deep down, if you were actually having a conversation with yourself, you know better. Like, you know, you shouldn't do it. But just knowing that and knowing kind of what she put herself through and how badly she wanted this for her mom. And if I were in her shoes, yeah, I probably would. I would be like, does this smell sketch? Are the vibes off 100%? But with that chance, like even with a slim chance of maybe there's a 10% chance that you can help your mom with Alzheimer's, why wouldn't you do it? You're not thinking about the consequences. I highly doubt she was like, oh, this is going to create the whole end of the world. That's probably not what she thought that was going to happen. So yeah, you kind of ignore those things, because to have a inkling of a possibility that this could happen, that you could realize your dreams for this, like who wouldn't want to do that? I think it's hard not to pass up that opportunity.
All right, moving on from there, which of our two main protagonists do you find more relatable, Barry or Helena? And in what ways, if any, can you relate to Slade?
I think I found Helena slightly more relatable, just coming from a psychology perspective for me. Like she's a scientist focusing on how the mind works. I'm a therapist. My job also works on memories and how the mind works. That was really the only connection I made, and I did not feel that I could really relate to Slade much, other than just maybe like being passionate about something. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah.
I don't think I really related to either one in that sense. But I don't need to relate to a book character to enjoy characters. That's never been my type of thing, just because and even then, like it's one of those things. So I've never had that like, oh, I have to, so I really don't find either of them relatable. It still didn't deter me from enjoying either character. But if I had to pick one, I think maybe Helena, just slightly, just because of I feel like my brain's more of a science-y, like I enjoy that kind of stuff more than shooting people as a cop. But I don't know, I'm kind of pulling strings over here. I don't really know. I just enjoyed her a little bit more than Barry. As far as relating to Slade, it's a stretch for me. I don't think he was very relatable at whatsoever. I can understand that he just was like, oh, everyone needs to experience this, but like I feel like that's such a rose-colored glasses type of look in life. Like he knows better, and that was just dumb of him. So I don't find him relatable, really. Maybe like Laura mentioned, his drive, like he's willing to kill literally anyone for this. Like, is that relatable? Because no, I don't think I would ever go that far for anything, really. Because it's like you're putting people's lives on the line there for this dream of yours. So yeah, no. Mm-mm.
So I guess I'm going to be the odd man out. I think I related more to Barry. And I think that's because, I don't really have, at least not this kind of science background, but I found that Barry as a detective, like part of his character is he's endlessly curious and always like wanting to know like the why and what's going on. And that's what I related to with him, is that way of thinking. Obviously, in Barry's case, that way of thinking turned out kind of poorly for him, because that's what ended up getting him kidnapped by Slade and all that stuff. But
would you say it ended up poorly? Because he actually found his quote unquote love of his life, quote unquote.
Right.
So like,
yeah.
Is
so
that
I guess maybe
not.
Maybe it's not. I mean, it's
quote unquote.
But yeah, that's for me. Like that's why I feel like I related more to Barry. Like just his way of thinking and the way he looked at stuff was easier for me to relate to than Helena. I liked Helena's character. I didn't see.
Is it Helena? Because you keep changing.
In the audiobook, it's Helena.
Helena.
We're gonna go with Helena then. Ignore all the times I said Helena and pretend I said Helena. As far as relating to Slade, I think for me, it's important. Not important. I'm trying to think how to phrase this. I know it's not that. I applaud authors that can make their villains either likable in some way or relatable in some way. And I think that Blake Crouch did do that here. I don't think Slade is a completely irredeemable villain. I think that the way that I can relate to him is, at the end of the day, I don't think he had like this ulterior motive to destroy the world. Like his goal in doing this is like when he sent Barry back to get to experience life with his daughter alive. Like he thinks he's doing a good thing. He thinks he's like, you know what? Like I can make these people's lives who are miserable. I can make it better. I can make the world a better place. And
that doesn't make him relatable. That makes him a really good, well-written, quote unquote villain. I don't think that's relatable though. It just means the writer's really good at writing these complicated people. That doesn't make it relatable, if you ask me.
What I was going to say is his hopeful motives make him relatable. Like I think that I like to think that I'm a hopeful, glass half full kind of a person, optimism.
Yeah, sure. But then you're thinking like a child who's like, oh, there's no consequences to my actions. Like that's a very narrow-minded way of thinking, I think.
I don't think he was thinking there was no consequences. I think he just didn't know what the consequences were.
No, I don't think he cared. He literally murdered someone, Michael, so he could live as a billionaire. Come on, that wasn't
true.
like at all.
Yeah, fair enough. That was that part. The initial aspect of that part was very selfish.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
Okay,
But
he's relatable.
Let me ask you this, Barbara.
Okay.
If somebody approached
Please
you
do.
and handed you a firearm and said, if you shoot this person that you don't know
No.
and kill them, we'll transfer
No.
$1 billion into your bank account.
No, because my life or someone else's life is not worth that. There's no amount that you can pay me to do that because I don't know.
Michael, are you literally saying, Michael, that you would shoot
Yeah,
a
he would.
stranger
He 100%
for $1 billion?
Yeah, 100%.
So not in that exact scenario, but I've always
Then
found...
why did you give that scenario then? Like, did you think I would? Like, what is wrong with you?
It's a variant on like the red button scenario. Like if you're standing in a room and there's a red button and someone says if you push the red button, someone around the world that you don't know will die, but you get $1 billion. Like, would
that's
you press
not because at the end of the day, yeah, me too. I'm very concerned about Michael's psyche as well. I know that I don't care if I don't even know the person or if they're like the lowest of the low criminal, murdered billions of people. Like that to me is still not. That's not okay. It's not up to me.
My point in saying this and bringing up that thing is it's not to say that I would do that, but it's to say like I think that you can look at Slade's doing it and you can understand why he would do it or why someone would do it.
I don't understand. Yeah, people who don't value human life, people who think I'm better off. It's selfish people, and I don't agree with that whatsoever. You're a very selfish person if you think you're better than whoever else you're pushing the button on, regardless of who they are or not. They could be insignificant or whatever, but like who are you to say they're insignificant? Their life isn't insignificant.
I just think there are a lot of people on this planet that
I'm not saying there isn't.
Money is enough of a motivator.
Michael, like look at all these billionaire people. They obviously stepped on a few backs to get there for the most part. Not everybody, but some have. And I don't agree with that way of thinking. I don't. That's just me though.
When Helena laments her lack of personal relationships and work-life imbalance, Slade says, I think balance is for people who don't know why they're here. Do you agree?
I don't know. I get loving your work and enjoying it, but there's also a reason we need that balance between it and other things. I think loving something to the point of single-mindedness causes people like Slade. So I understand he's saying, you don't know why they're here and the purpose in life, but like you shouldn't be so single-minded or narrow-minded because that's where I feel like you have an issue because it's those people who get really disappointed in life or who are willing to push a red button and murder someone for money. That's where I feel like you're towing that line where there's a reason that people have come out and studies have said that you need that balance in whatever you do. It's great to have drive. It's great to have this, but you see these people who do that, who don't know how to shift back into other aspects of their life where they're having issues later on.
So yeah, I agree with Barbara on this one. I think that quote is effectively like it's someone who's obsessed with what they're trying to do or just like a workaholic's anthem. Like it's just that's I don't agree with it at all. I think it sounds very similar to a real quote that Elon Musk had not that many years ago. I think that his work-life balance could be described as similar to how Slade views the world. So no, I don't agree with that. I think that even if you are someone who is blessed to know exactly why you're here and exactly what you love and want to do, and you get to do it, I still think those people need a balance. Like that doesn't mean that just because you know that and you get to do it, that you should just work 24 hours a day and never have a life outside of that. So no, I disagree.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said about the whole, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life mindset. Like the whole quote about if you love your job, then you don't have to feel like you're going to work or whatever. But work-life balance is essential no matter how much you enjoy your job. Kind of like you guys both said. Psychologically speaking, we have to have balance as far as for self-care, but also just your humans innately need different things, and it's not possible for one job to meet all of the needs, especially like your intimacy needs. Like, you're not getting that from work, and if you are, you've got some issues going on that need to be addressed. But there's more to life than work, even if it is something that you're passionate about and love. Work doesn't give you, certain core values that people need in order to feel well-rounded and satisfied. So, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's more of like a machine. We're not machines, and I feel like that. And also, I feel like this harkens back to dark matter in the sense that, what was the main character's name? I'm really bad with names. The main character of Dark Matter, you see two versions of him: the one that focused on work, and the one that didn't and chose, I feel like, a better work-life balance. And you see which one was happier in life, not the one who got everything he wanted in work experience and lost that out. So I'm just, it's another little, I think, tying the thread between the author's work. I feel like he's letting people know, like, hey, this isn't a healthy outlook.
Yeah, I agree. That was a good callback to Dark Matter, Barbara.
God, you're praising me here, huh? This is twice now in one podcast? Ooh.
Anyway, does the view of time presented in the book make you think differently about deja vu or memories in general, and how so? I think that this was how the timelines are and how everything jumps around, and it was the twistiest part of the book, I think. And there were definitely it was a few timeline jumps before I think my brain fully grasped how this technology was working and what was happening. And so, yeah, it absolutely, it does make you think differently about deja vu. And I mean, I think there actually is a theory where when people do have deja vu, it's because that has already happened in another of the billions of timelines that are going at the same time. And so it does, it opens up your mind to the wormhole or the black hole of, to fall down and think about all the insanity that could potentially be. But,
for the record, the deja vu has been proven that's just misfiring of neurons, just an FYI.
Oh,
but I mean,
cool. I didn't know that.
You can also have these theories,
there are people that believe the whole
100%, 100%. That's the fun part of being a human. You just don't literally you don't know until
right. Do we ever know?
Right. But anyways, I just kind of wanted to mention that.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, I appreciate you chiming in.
This was definitely where a big portion of my mind effery happened, because false memory syndrome is actually a real condition in history of the psychological world. I think it was coined in the 80s or 90s, but it's pretty controversial. People used it a lot in the court system for I don't know, to get out of things, or so it's pretty controversial. It's not currently in the DSM for diagnosing, but it surrounds basically suppressed memories and a person's ability to dissociate after traumatic experiences. False memories in themselves are also a common phenomenon, not the syndrome itself, but having false memories. For example, a young child can only form memories once certain brain functions have matured. But if your parent tells you a story of something that you did as a little baby and you see pictures of it, then eventually you feel like you have that memory and it's very vivid. So it definitely makes you think about memories differently. And also the fact that walking into a room and forgetting why you're there now, every time I do that, I'm going to be like, is this myself in a different timeline? Definitely a mind F. And like Michael said, there are people that think deja vu is, a form of something you've already lived in a past life, but the psychology of memories is really interesting, just in general.
So interesting, yes.
And so to have this book be around it and be that's where I before, when we weren't in the spoilers yet, I'm this could actually happen. Not this chair theory thing, but people falsely remembering things, or just, I don't know. It's a very scary thought.
Have you seen that study where they did, where it was a car, they recorded this car crash and they asked the people who observed the car crash, and depending on how they were asked the question is how they remembered it, using aggressive terms of what happened in the car crash versus softer tones. People will remember oh yeah, he was probably going over 100 miles per hour versus he was only going 30. It's how people used leading questions that's memories and, like it's very, very interesting for memory stuff. It's
memory stuff is crazy. So that's why this book was such a disturbing for me, I guess.
Agreed. So yeah, just honestly echoing what Lauren said, this was probably the hardest thing to wrap my head around, was how time was presented in this book, because I've never seen it done based off of our memories. I am still not sure if I agree with how it's presented, just because of how we know of with memories, but it's just a very, the mind effery, as Lauren pointed out, like, it's one of those things where it was so intriguing to me and so interesting, and also really hard to grasp the concept, because like my understanding, I was like, no, there's no way, but like, is there, there's that possibility, and it's crazy to think about. It just definitely made me think about memories a lot differently, or in a different way. And I really, 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 really enjoyed that aspect of it, because I was just like, that meme, that's me.
Well, and then like even thinking about like you go to a new place, or you go to like somewhere that you don't think that you've been, and then all of a sudden you remember, oh, I actually did come here like this time, like where you get that memory flooding randomly. So like when he was writing about like the timeline stopping or whatever, and then everybody suddenly remembers all the things from that thing at the same time, it like makes you wonder like, oh, I suddenly remember that like this about this restaurant or whatever, and like,
right. Or even when he first traveled back to that night of his daughter's death, he thought he remembered it like, oh, and this and this and this, and then he realized that he played in his mind wishful thinking, that he told his daughter that he loved her and that he was paying attention to her when she was talking to him, but really he was ignoring her, more focused on, I think it was a baseball game or something like that, and didn't even once turn around and say, oh, love you type thing. And it just goes to show you what our memories, what our mind is, and how powerful it is to try to help us cope with things too.
Right. And how unreliable memory is.
Exactly.
Like, and how our reality is based on those memories, which is just a scary thought.
Yes, it is. All very good points. And yeah, very unreliable, surprisingly unreliable, I think, when you start pulling at threads. So Helena feels solely responsible for the fate of the world due to her creation of the chair. Is she right for feeling this way?
I said no. She didn't create the chair with the knowledge that it would destroy the world. She was trying to do something good. She was trying to help her mother with Alzheimer's. Like she didn't make the chair thinking like, oh, I'm going to do all this stuff that Slade ultimately ended up like taking it to. It's definitely a normal response for her to feel responsible, but it's not fair for her to put that on herself entirely. Obviously, she is responsible for a portion of it just because it is her invention. And she's also kind of responsible for not destroying it sooner, like for perpetuating it, I guess. But I don't think that it's fair to say that she's entirely solely responsible for the fate of the world. That's a lot to put on one person.
Yeah, I have to echo your sentiments there. I mean, I get why she feels this way and why she does, but if you boil it down to the core of the issue, it's the chair. But to solely put blame on her isn't factual, because she's not the one who took this idea and ran with it as far as like nuclear. She knew, because there was that timeline where she got caught and the government took it, and she told them, this is not going to work out how you think it is. As soon as other countries find out what you are doing, they're going to retaliate. They're going to get it. Something's bad's going to happen. And guess what? It did. And then you have the nuclear war of end of the world, catastrophic issues happening. And she knew from day one, like, this is not a good thing. We can't have this. But like Lauren said, granted, I understand why she feels that way, because she's blaming herself. She's like, if I had not invented this, this wouldn't be a thing. But that's not how these things work. But she, she, like I said, she was right in thinking people wouldn't use it correctly just because of, human nature. So, but it
would be like saying that the inventor of like fentanyl, right?
Right.
Would have ever predicted that it would be misused like it is now. Like the medical community, it's a very useful medication for them, and like it has been for years. And when it's used correctly, it's great, and it helps patients who are in unbearable pain and things like that. But like the creator of that never could have imagined that it would be, we would be where we are in this current crisis. So that's kind of how I put it.
Yeah.
So I 100% agree with both of you. I think that like Barbara said, I understand why she would feel responsible, because I think that probably there are other inventors in real life who have had their creations exploited and feel somewhat responsible for the negative outcomes. But I think that if you look at this, like, she can only feel responsible in hindsight, because she had good intentions when she invented it. It didn't turn out to be what she thought. And even when it turned out to be what it was, like, let's just pretend that she was like super excited to get to send people back and make corrections to their lives. Before you knew what the or what was going to happen, like the negative consequences of that, even that's not like, there's no negative motive to thinking you're helping people. So I think that I understand, like you guys said, why she feels that way, but no, I don't think that she should feel like she's solely responsible for all these negative things, because she's not. At the end of the day, she created something she thought was going to be a good thing, and it turned out to have some really negative consequences. But that doesn't mean she should feel responsible for the bad things that happen. We'll keep talking about the chair a little bit. What do you guys think the pros and cons of the chair are?
So, I mean, you should just read the book, because I think you'll see the pros and cons really, like, realistically. I think the book showed that in great detail. I think the intent, the original purpose of the chair, you could give the pros to, but I feel like that doesn't outweigh what it was actually used for. And I honestly don't think something like that should be created, because it's not like it's just your life that you're messing up. You're really toying with other people's as well, as you could see in the book, where your action affects everyone else around you. So if you don't do one thing, that kind of piggybacks and bleeds into other aspects of other people's lives.
Yep.
Case in point, Barry's daughter couldn't handle the fact that in one timeline, and originally she's supposed to die. Like, how effed up is that, knowing that you had died? Like, that's really a weird thing to think about, and you shouldn't be messing with stuff like this.
So I think with full understanding of the chair and what it is, there are no pros. It's all cons once you understand how things go. But I can also understand how the inventor and even Slade and some of the other people initially could see a lot of things as pros. Like, on paper, if you don't think there are any negative consequences, and you can just, go back in time and make, World War II never happen, for example, like, that seems like that would be a great thing to stop all these people from dying, but there's consequences to that. It's like
the book even mentioned that for
like
World War
II,
like
people never being born.
Exactly. Like,
right.
Your parents are never going to meet, because the only reason why they met was because they left this country to go to this country, or all these people who had been dead or alive, and now how's the consequence? Like, then the world's, there's too many people. It's this whole thing. It's yes.
Yep. It seems like if you just pretend you don't know any of the negative consequences, it seems like there should be pros you can list, but
sure,
when you know all of it, there aren't. It's all cons, and it's just something that shouldn't be used.
Yeah, I said, I think the book did a good job of showing the pros and cons. But honestly, I think even the pros that are there aren't worth the cons, obviously, like Michael just said. It's dangerous playing with people's memories. It's dangerous playing with people's psyches, even if it is under the guise of, for the greater good or whatever. Like when they were doing it to where it was, an immediate thing, oh, there was a school shooting, and then they immediately, tried to undo that quickly so it didn't affect too much or whatever. It's those kids still have those traumatic memories, the parents still have those traumatic, you're actually almost doing more harm. It's I don't know. Yeah, there are no pros really once you understand what it does, even though that was not Helena's intention. That's ultimately how it played out. So
I'm glad you mentioned the school shooting thing, though, because I think at that point in the use of the chair, they were a lot closer to it being a pro, to where you could argue, if you're stopping a school shooting minutes after it happens, yes, there's trauma on both sides of that equation. So I think it's easier to argue that was a good thing. Those kids are alive because of that, and not a lot of the timeline changed.
You mentioned, some people just can't handle the fact that they were supposed to be dead.
Yeah.
How do you treat something like that?
That's the problem. If you don't know how to treat something like that, then it becomes an issue. I'm just saying, when they were initially using it for those things, they were correcting so quickly.
If it was the whole thing that they had, the issue is these old memories trickling back. That is the issue, the core issue of the chair. And obviously, that's how they fixed it, is because that didn't happen.
Right.
But that's that's the issue of the chair. Obviously, when Barry fixed it, and that's no longer a thing, but then, like I said, you're just playing, and that's not
you're playing God, right? You're trying to everything, I don't know, but like you said, Michael, the school shooting and those scenes were definitely
Mhm.
where I was like, maybe there are some pros for the chair, but you still see the aftermath of that. And then those kids then now have like suicidal thoughts because they're like, well,
Right.
I should be dead. And like, I've got,
Yeah.
and
In a
then,
perfect world, that
yeah,
chair wouldn't have you remember those things, and that's what they were
Right.
trying to figure out. And if that's the case, but then like you said, you're playing God at that point, because then everybody wants to be like, well, this is more important because these people die. Well, what about this? How do you balance out who is more important here?
I just thought about this. Can you imagine how trippy that would be if you're like the evil person in this scenario, like the guy that's about to walk into like a school and do that, like just how like some like Navy SEAL walk up and shoot you before your plan even goes off, like
yeah.
how trippy
Even,
that would
or
probably
like
be.
a bank robbery or something, like he just goes in and they'll be like, not today, Junior. But
Walking,
then I
there's
feel
like
I feel like they did say that though, that like, maybe this is a false memory.
Ooh.
But I feel like there was a mention of like it deterring future criminals.
yeah,
Yeah,
Because
yes.
so
It
like
did.
basically saying like if
Yeah.
the government can use it and then criminals know that the government can undo their stuff or figure it out or like watch and see who it was. Like in the case of the murdering of that young
The little
girl or whatever,
girl, yeah.
Helena basically was convinced that like by these government officials that was going to be a good thing because criminals would see that. And and so part of you is like, okay, like maybe, but you're also
Yeah.
still messing with a lot of people's
That's what I'm
psychological
saying.
well-being.
It's the
And
teetering on that edge, really.
Yep.
Which way is the needle gonna fall? And it's
Yep.
one of those cases. It's like
and
And they-
ethics are so gray, like they're so gray.
exactly.
And so it's like with something that powerful, like I don't know
Yeah.
how you would ever have an ethics committee big enough or
Mhm.
competent enough to even make those decisions.
They did. That wasn't a false memory, though, Lauren. They did straight up say that the crime did go down because of what they were doing. Because
I thought
criminals
they
were
talked about
afraid
that.
that they would get stopped before they could even do it. So yeah, it was like I think one of the things I was reading about this book after the fact was that they called it like the Batman effect because they're afraid to commit crimes because Batman will get them. In this case, they're afraid to commit crimes because they're going to go back in time and somehow stop them. So
The chair will get you.
the chair will get them.
The chair
right?
will get you.
So in this book, the author leaves the book somewhat open-ended. Do you believe that Barry and Helena will eventually be together again? I think that I think it's one of those things like if you're optimistic, then you hope that they will, because you do experience quite a bit of their romance and love story in the book and their connection. Like they live many, 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 many more years together than anybody should get to in a natural life because of, Helena going back over and over and over and over again and trying to fix things. So, I mean, I think I like that it was left open-ended, but I think that I do hope that they ended up together because they definitely, I mean, they had a good relationship every time. Like at least it seemed like there was he fell in love with her all over again because she knew what she was looking for. Like she remembered everything, but he didn't remember it until it got to the point where, the timelines merged again. So that was kind of a trippy thing in the book when they got to that point in their relationship, because all of a sudden, like he'd go from like thinking like I've spent my life with this woman that I love to like being like, oh, I've spent hundreds of years with this person that I love. And so, yeah. Anyway, to answer the question optimistically, yes, I hope that they did end up together in the OG timeline.
Yes, I disliked the incomplete sentence at the end. It took a while for me to get over that. But I do think that they would end up together again eventually. Because why not? True love.
So if you believe in soulmates and that sort of thing, then sure, obviously they're going to end up together. I just find that a very hard concept to swallow. Just because if you think about it, just one person out there and billions and billions of people, like what the probability of you finding that person? I'm more of there's multiple people that you are compatible with thought process, but I don't want to be a downer here, but I would like to think, given their history, that they would end up together. And as much as I like to, people probably think I'm a cynic. I do like happy endings. I do enjoy that in books because life isn't like that. So I would love for them to have a happy ending. And honestly, I enjoyed this ending. Oh, I don't know. Is this a question?
Yes, it is. It's the next question.
Okay, just kidding. I won't go into that then.
So, final question. What were your thoughts on the ending?
So I think it ended as well as it could have, minus that sentence thing that it got cut off. I would have preferred for them to finish the sentence, even if it did leave on a cliffhanger. I definitely liked it better than several of the other ways that it could have ended, like in previous memories or timelines. Like they could have ended at any point. I felt like I liked the video thing. I thought that was interesting. Kind of trippy, like he's watching himself with Helena, and then like he's, and then he figures out like, oh, I know the solution now, and like goes back. I think ultimately I did enjoy the ending, even though it was a little unfinished, because I feel like we got a lot of things answered too, like in that scene at the end where he's able to like watch kind of how it played out with Helena and all of that. So in like Antarctica, right? They were like, yeah. So
So I figured something like that was bound to happen given how he ended the other book we read, to be honest with you. I actually enjoyed it because I didn't like how Helena erased Barry's child in his previous life, because that kind of made him how he is, and the whole reason why she fell in love with him in the first place, because that is the original timeline. So I feel like erasing that, I absolutely hated that aspect of when she first did that. I was like, what the hell? Like, you don't just do that. Like, I understand you want to meet him when they're young and all this other stuff, but there's a reason you guys fell in love in the first place, I think. But anyways, I think this was just the best case scenario where they met later in life and hopefully end up together without the whole end of the world and trying to save the world aspect of the original timeline.
So like Barbara said, I also kind of expected this kind of an ending after Dark Matter. And I think that the fact that Blake Crouch has pulled this off so well twice speaks a lot to his talents as an author, because there's a lot of books that I feel like could end without giving the audience full closure, and you'd just be pissed and it wouldn't be a good ending and you'd be talking negatively about that. But in this case, it almost makes the story better when you don't get full closure, because you're forced to like the book, you're forced to sit with the book for longer after. It's not like the book just ends and then you're like, wow, that was a really nice story. You rate it and then you move on with your day. Like when this book ends, like you sit with it for a while, because you're sitting there thinking like, well, what happened next? How did everything go? And it's just like how Dark Matter ended. And I think that he does that very effectively, and it worked really well in this book.
Or if you're me, you're sitting there thinking, what is real? What is life? What are my memories?
What is the world? I don't know what to do.
Because like there are at least 5 times a day now that I'll walk into a room and not remember I was there. Now I kind of attribute that to the toddler at my feet saying, "Mommy, mommy, mommy," and then forgetting that way. But it could be that I'm living a bunch of different timelines simultaneously.
Could be
different memories.
And so I thought it was really interesting when Barbara got to the point where Helena went back in time for the first time, and she intercepts Barry before he has a chance to meet his wife, and kind of like in Barbara's mind stole him. She was so mad. She's like, "Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?" I was like, "What?" She's like, she just goes back and just takes Barry out of his normal cycle and takes it from his wife. And I was like, well, I mean, yeah, that is, you just got to keep reading. And she's like, no, this is you can't do that. And it was kind of funny. Like
I just feel like as if it happened to me, I would be really angry. Like I understand that it's not a good thing that happened. I understand all of this, but at the end of the day, like that's still his things to feel, his things to remember, his things to grow or not grow or experience. It's his experiences, and she erased that from him and said, no, I don't know. Yeah. But
no, I thought it was interesting. Your reaction to that was kind of funny.
I agreed though how Barbara, you said like there's a reason that they fell in love, and like our experiences shape us as people over time. And so like you are a different person in each phase of your life. And like there are phases of my life that I guarantee you like somebody like my husband would not have fallen in love with me in, and vice versa. And so like you have to live those experiences to become the person that you are, that she loves. And so who's to say that like she could erase that and like find him sooner? If I could meet you sooner so I could love you longer. It's like, yeah, but you might not actually love them in that phase of their life.
Agree. Like I always, when people are like, oh, I just wish I would have met X or whatever sooner, and then we could have, I was like, but you don't know if you would have met them sooner, if you would have liked who they were. They could have been completely a different person because they didn't get to experience those things that made them the person that they are, who you currently love. So just to think that way, I feel like is kind of very narrow-minded. I feel like I'm calling a lot of people that today. You're narrow-minded. You're narrow-minded.
Well, with that, we've made it to the end of the podcast. So let's talk about our scores for this book. Barbara, what was your score for Recursion?
So I gave it a 7.75, and I know. I really enjoyed this book, but going off of the two books that we read for this period of our podcast, I didn't like it as much as Dark Matter. So it has to be lower than that. And so that's why it's a 7.75. But overall, I really did enjoy this book because it really makes you think.
I was just booing you for your
my
big
favorite,
decimal.
Your favorite.
Yeah. For me, I gave this one a 7.5. I also looked at it in the same way that Barbara did, and I didn't like it as well as I liked Dark Matter. I really liked it. This isn't to say that like this is like you shouldn't read this book or anything like that. It's just I did like Dark Matter more. So this one's going to be a 7.5 for me.
To echo both of you, I liked Dark Matter slightly better, so I also gave it a 7.5.
It's funny because I liked the characters of this book more, but I think the overall story in the Dark Matter I enjoyed more, and I feel like that offset it because I can't remember the other dude, especially because it's only his point of view. Mm-hmm. You know, I like this, like the main two characters of this one. I liked their interactions and their story a little bit better, but overall, I think the other one was a better book. Weird how that kind of.
I just wonder if I had read this one first, if I would like this one better. Yeah. But I think that I really liked Dark Matter, which introduced me to this author, which introduced me to the whole concept of like these multiple timeline type things because I am not a sci-fi person. And so I think like Dark Matter was responsible for like hooking me into like this part of the sci-fi. So I wonder if I had read this first, if I would have liked it better. But we'll never know. Maybe in another memory.
Different memory. Different memory.
I mean, and I guess I'll also throw this in there, like for both of you and for our listeners. If you've read these two books and you enjoyed them, you really should check out Blake Crouch's Wayward Pines trilogy. It's one of his earlier writings. It's definitely a huge mind F that I got into because of the TV show. I had never heard of Blake Crouch until I watched that show in 2015. But anyway, so this made our group score for Recursion a 7.583 repeating, but we rounded that up to a 7.6, Barbara. And so our group score for this one's a 7.6. Like always, make sure you're following Badass Literature for free in your favorite podcast app. Give us a rating and leave us a review if they allow you to. Super important. It helps our podcast get seen by more people. And we also love hearing things from you guys as to what you liked or didn't like. Also, don't forget to make sure you're following us on social media as well. Our username there is Badass Lit Pod on both Instagram and Facebook.
Have feedback about today's episode? ? Contact us by writing to badassliteraturesociety@gmail.com. You can also send us a DM or leave a comment on Instagram or Facebook. Michael gave you the handles. Just, skip back 15 seconds and you'll hear it there. Sorry, I have to make this. I'm one of those people. It's just monotonous, so I just had to help a little there. So
I got to shout you out, though. That was the first time you've done that and gotten our email address correct without having to say it again.
I mean, I kind of there at the end a little there. Like
I'm giving you credit.
And I've gotten once I've actually said it without, without like flubbering there. And the literature is a hard word for me to say, you guys. So
anyway, with that, we will see you all next month. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate each and every one of you.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Yes, happy holidays. We'll see you in 2023.
Weird.
I'm Michael.
I'm Barbara.
And I'm Lauren.
Bye.
Bye.
So knowing all that, what were your thoughts on the ending?
You also skipped the question.
Did I skip
We had the biggest question that you would like answered.
So sorry.
I don't have a question to ask, but
I don't either.
So we could skip that one because I don't have a question to ask either. So we'll just skip that. So
Blue, that's definitely going at the end.